I'm Adam. And I'm Chick. And this is Where There's a Williams, There's a Way. Hey Chick, have you ever thought about changing your name? I have. What? Well, in a way I have already. What do you mean? My whole name is Chickeezy. That's not changing your name. It's shortening it, like Thomas going by Tom or Nicholas by Nick. Partly. I shortened it because Chick is easier to say. Easier than Chickeezy? That's not hard to say at all. Okay, so maybe it isn't easier to say, but it does sound more normal. I've never met another person named Chick or Chickeezy. Well, I just like Chick better, which is fine. In today's book, a little girl struggles with her name. Let's get started. Chrysanthemum by Kevin Henkes. The day she was born was the happiest day in her parents' lives. She's perfect, said her mother. Absolutely, said her father. And she was. She was absolutely perfect. Her name must be everything she is, said her mother. Her name must be absolutely perfect, said her father. And it was. Chrysanthemum. Her parents named her Chrysanthemum. Chrysanthemum grew and grew and grew, and when she was old enough to appreciate it, Chrysanthemum loved her name. I love my name. She loved the way it sounded when her mother woke her up. She loved the way it sounded when her father called her for dinner. And she loved the way it sounded when she whispered it to herself in the bathroom mirror. Chrysanthemum, Chrysanthemum, Chrysanthemum. Chrysanthemum loved the way her name looked when it was written with ink on an envelope. She loved the way it looked when it was written with icing on her birthday cake. And she loved the way it looked when she wrote it herself with her fat orange crayon. Chrysanthemum, Chrysanthemum, Chrysanthemum. Chrysanthemum thought her name was absolutely perfect, and then she started school. On the first day, Chrysanthemum wore her sunniest dress and her brightest smile. She ran all the way. Hooray! Said Chrysanthemum. School! But when Mrs. Chud took roll call, everyone giggled upon hearing Chrysanthemum's name. It's so long, said Joe. It scarcely fits on your name tag, said Rita, pointing. I'm named after my grandmother, said Victoria. You're named after a flower. Chrysanthemum wilted. She did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She thought it was absolutely dreadful. The rest of the day was not much better. During nap time, Victoria raised her hand and informed Mrs. Chud that Chrysanthemum's name was spelled with 13 letters. That's exactly half as many letters as there are in the entire alphabet, Victoria explained. Thank you for sharing with us, Victoria, said Mrs. Chud. Now put your head down. If I had a name like yours, I'd change it, Victoria said as the students lined up to go home. I wish I could, thought Chrysanthemum miserably. So I get why people are making fun of Chrysanthemum because of her name, but why is nobody addressing the fact that she's a mouse? Are you serious? Yeah, why not? Don't you think that's weird? All of the characters are mice. Oh, really? Were you actually paying attention to the story at all? Sorry, I don't know how I didn't notice that. The book is clearly a fictional story filled with talking mice. I bet that there's going to be some sort of message. Oh my gosh, of course there is. Let's get back to the story. Welcome home, said her mother. Welcome home, said her father. School is no place for me, said Chrysanthemum. My name is too long. It scarcely fits on my name tag, and I'm named after a flower. Oh, pish, said her mother. Your name is beautiful. And precious and priceless and fascinating and winsome, said her father. It's everything you are, said her mother. Absolutely perfect, said her father. Chrysanthemum felt much better after her favorite dinner, macaroni and cheese with ketchup. and an evening filled with hugs and kisses and parcheesi. That night, Chrysanthemum dreamed that her name was Jane. It was an extremely pleasant dream. The next morning, Chrysanthemum wore her most comfortable jumper. She walked to school as slowly as she could. She dragged her feet in the dirt. Chrysanthemum, 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 she wrote. She even looks like a flower, said Victoria as Chrysanthemum entered the playground. Let's pick her, said Rita, pointing. Let's smell her, said Joe. Chrysanthemum wilted. She did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She thought it was absolutely dreadful. The rest of the day was not much better. During nap time, Victoria raised her hand and said, A chrysanthemum is a flower. It lives in a garden with worms and other dirty things. Thank you for sharing with us, Victoria, said Mrs. Chud. Now put your head down. I just cannot believe her name, Victoria said as the students lined up to go home. Neither can I, thought Chrysanthemum miserably. Welcome home, said her mother. Welcome home, said her father. School is no place for me, said Chrysanthemum. They said I even look like a flower. They pretended to pick me and smell me. Oh, pish, said her mother. They're just jealous. And envious and begrudging and discontented and jaundiced, said her father. Who wouldn't be jealous of a name like yours, said her mother. After all, it's absolutely perfect, said her father. Chrysanthemum felt a trifle better after her favorite dessert, chocolate cake with buttercream frosting, and another evening filled with hugs and kisses and parcheesi. That night, Chrysanthemum dreamed that she really was a chrysanthemum. She sprouted leaves and petals. Victoria picked her and plucked the leaves and petals one by one until there was nothing left but a scrawny stem. It was the worst nightmare of Chrysanthemum's life. Chrysanthemum wore her outfit with 7 pockets the next morning. She loaded the pockets with her most prized possessions and her good luck charms. Chrysanthemum took the longest route possible to school. She stopped and stared at each and every flower. Chrysanthemum, 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 the flowers seemed to say. You know, now that I think about it, kids made fun of the name Chick way more than they did Chickeezy. Like how? They'd ask me where my feathers were, or if I had learned how to fly yet. I could see that. But kids could have said the same thing about your full name. Maybe you only heard those because you only went by Chick. Maybe. Did it ever bother you when other kids would say those things? Not really. Well, why do you think that you never cared? Probably because I love my name. I was the one who chose it. Plus, you've always have to have a sense of humor about things. Did you do anything to embrace the uniqueness of your name? Sure. I went as a baby chicken every year for Halloween. Oh. Did you ever wonder if people weren't making fun of your name, but they're just talking about your Halloween costume? Huh. I never really thought about that. That morning, the students were introduced to Mrs. Twinkle, the music teacher. Her voice was like something out of a dream, as was everything else about her. The students were speechless. They thought Mrs. Twinkle was an indescribable wonder. They went out of their way to make a nice impression. Mrs. Twinkle led the students in scales. Then she assigned roles for the class musical. Victoria was chosen as the dainty fairy queen. Rita was chosen as the spiffy butterfly princess. Joe was chosen as the all-important pixie messenger. And Chrysanthemum was chosen as a daisy. Chrysanthemum's a daisy, chrysanthemum's a daisy, Joe, Rita, and Victoria chanted, thinking it was wildly funny. Chrysanthemum wilted. She did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She thought it was absolutely dreadful. What's so humorous? Asked Mrs. Twinkle. Chrysanthemum, was the answer. Her name is so long, said Joe. It scarcely fits on her name tag, said Rita, pointing. I'm named after my grandmother, said Victoria. She's named after a flower. My name is long, said Mrs. Twinkle. It is, said Joe. My name would scarcely fit on a name tag, said Mrs. Twinkle. It would, said Rita, pointing. And, said Mrs. Twinkle, I'm named after a flower too. You are? Said Victoria. Yes, said Miss Twinkle. My name is Delphinium Twinkle. And if my baby is a girl, I'm considering Chrysanthemum as a name. I think it's absolutely perfect. Chrysanthemum could scarcely believe her ears. She blushed, she beamed, she bloomed. Chrysanthemum, Chrysanthemum, Chrysanthemum. Joe, Rita, and Victoria looked at Chrysanthemum longingly. Call me Marigold, said Joe. I'm Carnation, said Rita, pointing. My name is Lily of the Valley, said Victoria. Chrysanthemum did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She knew it. Epilogue. Overall, the class musical was a huge success. Chrysanthemum was absolutely perfect as a daisy. Victoria made the only mistake. She completely forgot her lines as the dainty fairy queen. Chrysanthemum thought it was wildly funny, and she giggled throughout the entire dance of the flowers. Eventually, Mrs. Twinkle gave birth to a healthy baby girl, and of course, she named her Chrysanthemum. That is awesome that Chrysanthemum finally embraced her name. It only took one person to say that they like it. So what do you think the lesson is? Get someone popular to say how much they like your name? Or maybe you could be the one to give a compliment to others. Yeah, you could be the one to incite change. The one that can lead a person down a path of self-acceptance. Wow, that would be amazing. You know what else would be amazing? Here we go. It'd be amazing if you like this video and subscribe to the channel. I'm Adam. And I'm Chick. And this is Where There's a Williams, There's a Way. Did you know chrysanthemums were originally cultivated in China and were first recorded in writing in the 15th century BC? It was believed to have medicinal properties as an herb. The boiled roots were used as a cure for headaches, and it's also one of the 4 noble plants in Chinese culture.